YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 7 2024 NFL predictions. Well, for the Fanatic this week, I have to say this was the greatest week I have ever had as an NFL prognosticator. Ladies and gentlemen, I hit picking Nirvana. I have officially, for the first time in picking, had a perfect straight up week. Read it in week, ladies and gentlemen. If you watch my video from last week, I can tell you every pick I had, I went 14-0. That's right. Not 13-1, not 12-2, not 11-3, 14-0. Nada. Got every single game correct, predicted straight up. That is sensational for me. It boosted up my percentages tenfold. And against the spread, unfortunately, I took 4 underdogs in a week where everybody but the Philadelphia Eagles covered their spread. Fortunately, I took 10 favorites, so in that regard, I went 10-4 against the spread, which equals 71.4% against the spread. So by far, in picking both against the spread and straight up games, if you bet on me, if you bet with me, you would have been a winner to the highest degrees. So congratulations to other people out there. I know a few of my friends are doing this. They also have perfect records because they picked the same exact way I did. It is a glorious feeling that I am on. And as one of my friends told me earlier, it all goes downhill from the 14-0 record down from here. So I was thrilled by that. A lot of the games, for the most part, were not particularly close. Like Atlanta blew out Carolina. The Lions blew out the Cowboys. The Ravens-Commanders game was close, but that kind of... Colts-Titans was close. The Packers decisively beat the Cardinals. Trying to go through... the Eagles-Browns game was a bit close, and it should have been... Bengals-Giants. Yeah, so there were definitely moments where I felt like maybe that record wouldn't have been accomplished, but, going 14-0 is a feat that I will always remember for the rest of the season, probably the rest of my life, because it could be a very long time before I can say to you all again that I went undefeated in picking games. If I was a betting man, I actually put money on a 14-team parlay. I wonder how much money I could have made just making 14 straight money line picks this week. So, but overall, though, now with that week, being said, it boosted up both my records. So now overall for the year against the spread, I am now 43-46 with 3 pushes, which equals 48.4%. Straight up now for the year, I went from having about 57% to now I'm at 64.1%. So I jumped up about 6 percentage points, 6 or 7 percentage points in 1 week. If I can do that again next week, to get to 74-33, look out, everybody. Then I'm going to Vegas because I am on a picking tear. If it gets to 74-33, that's that's going on nearly 70% for the year, which is insane in terms of a straight up perspective. But before I go into my picks, though, the Bears and the Cowboys are on byes this week. So if you have Caleb Williams, the Bears defense, DeAndre Swift, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Cole Kmet, Dak, the Cowboys defense, Brandon Aubrey, Zeke, CeeDee Lamb. If you have any of those players on your fantasy teams, bench them because they will not be playing this weekend. All right, it's time for my picks for this week. So this week, when the 3-3 Denver Broncos travel to New Orleans to take on the 2-4 New Orleans Saints, the Denver Broncos are 1.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Denver here, -1.5, and Denver straight up. Then in London, the final England game of the International Series, when the 1-5 New England Patriots go to Jacksonville to take on the 1-5 Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jacksonville Jaguars are 5.5-point favorites in this game. I'm going to take Jacksonville here, -5.5, and Jacksonville straight up. Then the next game, when the 3-3 Seattle Seahawks go to Atlanta to take on the 4-2 Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons are 2.5-point favorites in this game. Give me the Atlanta Falcons here, -2.5, and the Atlanta Falcons straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-4 Tennessee Titans travel to Buffalo to take on the 4-2 Buffalo Bills. The Tennessee Titans are 8.5-point underdogs in this game. I'm going to take Buffalo here to win straight up. but I'm going to take Tennessee plus 8.5. Then the next game, with the 2-4 Cincinnati Bengals travel to Cleveland, take only 1-5 Cleveland Browns. Cincinnati Bengals are 5-point favorites in this game. Give me Cincinnati here -5 and Cincinnati straight up. Then the next game, with the 5-1 Houston Texans travel to Green Bay to take only 4-2 Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers are 3-point favorites in this game. Give me one of my few upset picks this week. Give me Houston here +3 and Houston straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-4 Miami Dolphins travel to Indianapolis, take only 3-2. The 3-3 Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts are 3.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Indianapolis here to win straight up, but I'm going to take Miami +3.5. Then the next game, when the 4-1 Detroit Lions travel to Minnesota to take only 5-0 Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings are 2.5-point favorites in this game. Give me the Minnesota Vikings here -2.5 and the Minnesota Vikings straight up. Then the next game, when the 3-2 Philadelphia Eagles travel to New York to take only 2-4 New York Giants. The Philadelphia Eagles are 3-point favorites in this game. Give me Philadelphia here -3 and Philadelphia straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-4 Las Vegas Raiders travel to Los Angeles to take only 1-4 Los Angeles Rams. The Los Angeles Rams are 5.5-point favorites in this game. Give me the Los Angeles Rams here -5.5 and the Los Angeles Rams straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-5 Carolina Panthers travel to Washington to take only 4-2 Washington Commanders. The Washington Commanders are 7.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Washington here -7.5 and Washington straight up. Then the next game, in a Super Bowl rematch from the previous year, a Super Bowl 58 rematch, when the 5-0 Kansas City Chiefs travel to San Francisco to take only 3-3 San Francisco 49ers. The San Francisco 49ers are 1.5-point favorites in this game. And my second outright upset of the weekend, give me Kansas City here +1.5 and Kansas City straight up. Then the next game, on Sunday Night Football, when the 2-4 New York Jets travel to Pittsburgh to take only 4-2 Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers are 1.5-point underdogs in this game. With all the news that's happened, and I will explain that later on in the video, I'm going to take the New York Jets here -1.5 and the New York Jets straight up. And then the two Monday night games, when the 4-2 Baltimore Ravens travel to Tampa Bay to take on the 4-2 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Baltimore Ravens are 3.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Baltimore here -3.5 and Baltimore straight up. And lastly, the last game, when the 3-3 Los Angeles Chargers, or the 3-2 Los Angeles Chargers travel to the 2-4 Arizona Cardinals. Los Angeles Chargers are 2.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Los Angeles here -2.5 and Los Angeles straight up. All right, it's time for my quick thoughts on each game. The Denver Broncos over the New Orleans Saints. This is a game, ladies and gentlemen, to where when you look at what happened with the Saints on Sunday, I thought through the first half they actually played fairly well. I wanted to shout out Spencer Rattler. He looked pretty effective. He threw his first career touchdown to Bub Means, who seemed like he had the best chemistry with Spencer Rattler throughout the entire game. They were able to make some decent plays, Juwan Johnson, and they had 3 massive turnovers on the Bucs through the first half, which I thought was incredibly important to keep them running. However, by the second half, after the Bucs defense started to realize what Spencer Rattler's tendencies were and started shutting down the lanes, he ended up throwing 2 interceptions, and he ended up scoring the rest of the way through. And it was very much where you watched the Saints and you were impressed by the first half, incredibly disappointed in the second. And you definitely also noticed that Chris Olave went down with an injury, which was significant. And Derek Carr wasn't there, so 2 of the best offensive weapons for the Saints were down. And for the Broncos, it was very much the opposite, to where you watched the first few quarters of the Broncos game, and the Chargers were just laying it on the Broncos, just running the ball effectively. J.K. Dobbins had about 90 to 97 yards rushing. He had a nice touchdown. Justin Herbert was having a very efficient day. Again, he's not... If you watch, the Chargers go throughout their game, he hasn't had a phenomenal year, statistically, in previous years, but they're winning games, and he's playing a complementary style of football, which I'm, pretty impressed with, just because, it's helping Herbert and the Chargers get victories, which is gaining confidence in, in where they're going as a franchise. But with Denver, it was very much by the end of the game, Denver started to pick it up a bit. They were able to run the ball a bit more effectively. They got a few big stops. Cortland Sutton had a fantastic one-handed touchdown grab. Bo Nix was using his legs and making a few good runs. So there were definitely moments where Bo Nix and the Broncos showed a lot of fight and grit. Their run game seemed to have a little bit more of a spark by the second half. They really couldn't run the ball throughout the first half. So, when you look at these two teams, both are, one's 500, the other is 2-4, and they're kind of at a crossroads. The reason why I'm going with the Broncos is two reasons. One, Sean Payton, coached in New Orleans all that time, so obviously he knows that environment, he knows that atmosphere, but also Dennis Allen was his defensive coordinator for years. So, Sean Payton knows everything that Dennis Allen will try to throw at him. He knows all the tendencies, he knows all the tells, and he will tell Bo Nix to properly, dissect and take advantage of the holes in the New Orleans defense. And I just think with no Olave and no Carr, telling Spencer Rattler, even though I know Patrick Surtain suffered a concussion and he may be out, I trust that the Broncos, with better coaching and a little bit of a better quarterback play with the roster they have, will beat the New Orleans Saints in a tough, gritty, grind-out game to win. Would I be surprised if the Saints won? No. Because the Saints showed some promise, but in a close game like this with both teams with significant injuries on the offensive and defensive sides of the ball, Surtain and Olave probably being out, I'll go with the better coach and the more experienced quarterback, and in that regard, that goes to Bo Nix and Sean Payton. So, that's all like Denver here, -1.5, and Denver straight up. The next game, the Jacksonville Jaguars over the New England Patriots. This is a game to where, when you look at the New England Patriots on Sunday, Drake May definitely showed some frustrations. He showed where we saw how raw he was as a rookie, and there were definitely throws and decisions. But also, we would see a few drives and a few throws where Drake May would throw a beautiful deep ball on like one of the Texans' best, or to Kayshon Boutte. So that was Pop Douglas had nice reception. Like, the Patriots offense at times showed sparks of what they could be under Drake May. The turnovers, I think, are an issue, but again, it was his first start. But you could see some of those sparks there. Okay? And for the Patriots defense, after the first couple drives, where they basically kind of run and pass right down the entire drive on the from the Texans offense, by the second half, they started to, wind up a little bit. They started tightening down a bit. The turnovers kind of cost them the game in short fields. That put Houston in position to score more points. And also, that was the first loss in New England for them against the Texans at home. That's the first time Houston went into their building and actually won the game. It's crazy how many years that's been since 2002. 22 years, and finally the Texans won a game in New England. But when you look at the Jags, it's where this game is kind of telling, because I trust the Patriots defense a lot more than the Jags defense, because Caleb Williams was just having a field day on that defense against whoever it was in the secondary. There were just wide open coverage gaps. There was just consistently easy, throwing windows. And the Jags offense, Evan Ingram had a great game, and I'm happy he was back. As someone as a fantasy owner that has Evan Ingram, it was great to see him back. But it almost just felt like as well that the Jags offense could not really rely outside of two people in terms of Evan and Thomas. Kirk made a nice couple contributions, but they could not run the ball. But I think the advantage that the Jags have is that they're already in London. So they're basically just going to stay the week through London. And, they're going to have, the advantage of just time. Their body's acclimated. And very much like I say about rookie quarterbacks, until something happens, I don't really take a rookie quarterback until they win their first game to know that they actually can win one. And I just think the Jags, knowing how desperate the situation is, I think they grind out a win against the Patriots team with a rookie quarterback in his second start internationally that I think will have some wild moments, but I think he also might have a few turnovers, which the Jags can definitely capitalize on to get the win. So, that's like Jacksonville -5.5 and Jacksonville straight up. The next game, the Atlanta Falcons over the Seattle Seahawks in the Battle of the Birds. This is a game to where I'm taking Atlanta based on that Atlanta, from what I've seen through the first 6 weeks, I have no shame in admitting, Atlanta's the third best team in the NFC. I only believe the Vikings and the Detroit Lions are better than them at this current moment. I think Atlanta, they found a nice complementary way to win. Algier and Robinson had, I think, almost 200 yards rushing. Kirk Cousins had about 190 yards passing. Darnell Mooney made a couple nice contributions. Kyle Pitts. And, you look at this Falcons offense and go, okay, this is a well-rounded offense that has multiple weapons. It can play effective football. It can play smart football. And just that Falcon defense with as loaded a secondary as you can have, along with a solid pass rush, to the A.J. Terrell injury is significant, and I'm hoping a quick and speedy recovery to Terrell for whatever injury he suffered in the game. But, like, in this moment, it's where also I just look at the Seahawks and go, you have talent, but it's just where, like, I've seen Geno play the last few weeks, and it hasn't been bad, but DK looks frustrated. Kenneth Walker couldn't really get the ball rolling against them. Maybe could he get the ball rolling against the Falcons defense? Maybe, because I felt like Chuba Hubbard had a solid game in that regard. But you look at the Seahawks, you look at the Falcons. The Seahawks are a primarily offensive-based team with the weapons they have. I think Atlanta has a good enough balance on offense and defense that going up against Geno in that environment, I think the Falcons grind out a win, especially with how bad their run defense has been at times. That I definitely feel like Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier should have very solid days against a very bad Seattle run defense. Should be an interesting game because Seattle's had, recent history going to Atlanta and winning. I just think this time around with Kirk Cousins, with the roster they have, the offensive line to build around it, the Falcons get a good, comfortable win to move their win streak to 4 straight games to get to 5-2. So that's why I like Atlanta here, -2.5, and Atlanta straight up. The next game, the Buffalo Bills over the Tennessee Titans. This is a game, ladies and gentlemen, to where this is not very... I'll put it this way. Buffalo should cream the Titans. Okay, if you're doing like straight up picks or like I'm in some straight up pools and you have confidence point, put 15 confidence points on the Buffalo Bills. This is the most confident pick I have in terms of straight up picking the entire weekend. I think the Bills, they've been able to grind out a lot of impressive victories. Josh Allen, an impressive stat for him. 6 consecutive games without throwing an interception. That's huge for the Bills. That's huge. Because the way I think they've gotten to a 4-2 start, especially with the way you could argue how the games have gone, they've won because Josh Allen hasn't turned the ball over. If he turned the ball over once in every one of those games, you could argue the Bills could be a 2-4 football team. Because the only games that you could argue that they would have lost that they would have definitively won could have been Miami. And, they would have at least had 2 wins. 2 of those other games, if Josh Allen commits a turnover, they could have lost to Arizona, and they could have lost to the Jets last night. So, I think that's a credit to Josh Allen. Ray Davis, a rookie running back, had over 120 or 140 scrimmage yards. The most scrimmage yards by a Bills rookie running back since 2014. And I think the Buffalo Bills grinded out a very gritty and tough win that have firmly placed themselves as the best team in the AFC East. Fortunately, they're playing the worst team, I believe, in the AFC, and arguably the worst team in the NFL period, in the Tennessee Titans, led by Moldy Mayo man Will Levis, who routinely and consistently shows you that he can find new ways to be an accurate quarterback and a bonehead in every decision that he makes. And it's baffling to the absurdity to watch. And it's almost like it's a really bad car wreck. Watching Will Levis is a horrible car wreck. And you hope everybody, you hope everybody's okay. But the dummy knocked out a ball boy and tore his ACL. Like I said, he was shooting guns of happiness if everybody's looked at the internet and seen Will Levis do his dumb finger guns. But it's confounding because the Titans defense has actually done very well. Do people realize the Titans have been the #1 defense this year in terms of yards allowed overall? That's stunning for Denard, our former defensive back coach, Desmond Denard, or Denard Wilson. There we go, Denard Wilson. He has done a sensational job with that defense, and they have offensive talent. Tony Pollard's done a good job. Think about it. Think about how little they trust Will Levis. They ran a draw on 3rd and 19 on their own 20. I am more ticked off at Gus Bradley that he let that 3rd and 19 draw work into the end zone. But that shows you how little trust they have in that quarterback that they felt that Brian Callahan had to go to a draw. Tony Pollard and Will Levis almost literally ran and threw for the same yards per attempt or yards per touch, which is a massive problem because that is Christian Ponder, Adrian Peterson-esque bad. And I honestly, and you know, maybe this is my last shot to Will Levis. That's disrespectful to Christian Ponder. Heck, I would take his wife. I would take his wife over Will Levis at this point, who is currently, you know, doing a broadcasting, you know, gig somewhere. But yeah, Will Levis is just one of the most confounding and odd quarterbacks out there that I just don't know why the Titans haven't realized, hey, let's go maybe get Jameis, let's try Brett Rudolph. Brett Rudolph is on your roster. He won you the one game that you won. And the Titans could have been in a much different spot. Maybe not a future, you know, high future spot, but they could have been contending in the AFC South a lot better if they didn't have the moldy Mayo man back under center for them. So again, but the reason why I'm taking the Titans is because of how good that defense is, with somehow the roster's been. And the Titans, to their credit, have basically been in every game this year except one. And I think the Bills can kind of hang around and maybe make it to where they hang within 8 points. But Will Levis at the end of the day will throw a horrific interception or make one turnover that costs the Titans the game. And watch me be wrong, and the Bills do exactly what I thought with Jacksonville, where they roll them, and it's like, okay, the Titans are just definitively the worst team in the AFC and arguably the worst team in the league. So, but that's all. Like Buffalo here straight up at Tennessee plus 8.5. The next game, the Cincinnati Bengals over the Cleveland Browns. This is a game to where easily I am taking the Cincinnati Bengals here based on the fact of where the Bengals are a bit healthier. They got their defensive line back. They stopped a 77-game streak of allowing their opponents to score double digits. Joe Burrow had the longest rush in Bengals franchise history at 47 yards. Chase, you know, the Bengals in key moments were able to get good runs and get some big penalties that allowed Chase Brown to score the game-clinching touchdown. And I just like where Cincinnati, like if you look at their last few weeks, even though you have to give the Giants defense credit, they did a great job because them and the Patriots are the only teams to hold the Bengals offense to under 20 points this year. It just, unfortunately for the Giants, their offense couldn't do anything. But it's also where you're playing the Cleveland Browns, who, when you watch the Browns, getting Nick Chubb will be a significant help for this team moving forward this week, and that should help their offense. But that offensive line looks shot. Their secondary has a lot of injuries. Their linebackers have injured. Like, that defense is injured to you-know-what. The offensive line shot to you-know-what. Amari Cooper is leading the team in drops. Njoku can't really make that, you know, effective plays. And the Browns just cannot move the football. There was that crazy stat during the game that Deshaun Watson had to get going. They said 26 consecutive third downs without completing them, which is insane, knowing how much they, you know, that's just crazy how, like, every time, you know, if you're playing the Browns, you just have to get the second down. Because at this point, he cannot convert a third down due to sacks or inability to throw or inaccurate passes. Who knows? But I just look at this Browns team, and I felt like it was more of an indictment against Philadelphia to let the Browns hang around and compete until the very end of the game, until they had to get the A.J. Brown reception to ice the game. But, you know, in this game, the Bengals and the Browns, both teams are bad, but I feel like the Bengals have at least some optimism, and their schedule lightens up to where the Bengals, I don't know if they win the AFC North like I originally had, but the Bengals could sneak back into the wildcard conversation with a win. And for the Browns, if you lose this week, you really have to start thinking, do we sell Amari Cooper off to the highest bidder and just completely tank the team and start a rebuild with Deshaun Watson and nothing else, which is a massive problem, but that's a different conversation for a different day. So that's like Cincinnati here, -5, and Cincinnati straight up. The next game, the Houston Texans over the Green Bay Packers. This is a game to where I am taking the Houston Texans here because I just believe in the better quarterback, and I'll take C.J. Stroud over Jordan Love. And I just trust that in Lambeau. He's been in some tough environments before. He's played around that region, being at Ohio State. The Texans know what they have. They have Joe Mixon back. They have Diggs. They have Dell. They have Schultz. They have just a very talented overall, you know, confounding roster. I think the Packers, you know, Romeo Doubs with the game of an injury. And I have to give the Packers credit. Their offense did show up very well. Jordan Love threw for 4 touchdowns. Jacobs kind of had a quiet day. But, you know, when I look at this game, I'm just going to go with the better quarterback here. I think, could the Packers win this one? Sure. They have a defense with Devontae Wyatt, Jair Alexander, Kenny Clark, Rashawn Gary, Eric Stokes, Quay Walker. Like, you have a solid defense. And, you know, Houston going into Green Bay, I can't remember the last time I don't even know the Texans have beaten the Packers in Lambeau through their franchise history. They might have, they might not have, but I like what this Texan roster has. I like the confidence in the Texans to grind one out. And I just think at the end of the day, if you're going to tell me with both rosters being about the same, what team are you going to take in terms of confidence? I will take the Houston Texans with their better quarterback to go into Lambeau to get to 6-1 for the season. So that's why I like Houston here, +3, and one of my couple of overall upsets of the week. Houston +3 here, and Houston straight up. The next game, the Indianapolis Colts over the Miami Dolphins. This is a game to where I'm taking the Indianapolis Colts here based on the fact that the Miami Dolphins, though they will, you know, they are getting healthier, they should be able to get Tyreek and all their skill positions back. They're still probably going to lean with Tyler Huntley to start again. And even with the Colts, as well as Joe Flacco has played, he's completed about 70% of his passes. He's played incredibly effective the last 2 games without Jonathan Taylor. But you look at the Colts in this spot, I don't know if Richardson can pull off this game. And I think I had some serious questions about how the Houston Texans or how the Indianapolis Colts handled Anthony Richardson's injury, because that was just incredibly weird to see him get hurt like that and practice the whole week, but then be told that, yeah, we're gonna have him as our emergency quarterback. So I think that's a little bit of a tell of where they're not very happy of how far he's progressed in this system. And I feel more confident about Joe Flacco starting. I'll take the Dolphins +3.5 regardless of who's starter. But I do believe Anthony Richardson will start, and I do think the Colts, with Tyler Huntley's lack of offense, because I believe he's had 1 passing touchdown over the last few games since Tua's been out. So it's a tough offense to watch, and I think the Colts, in that environment, with the defense they have, I don't think they're going to let Tyreek or Jalen burn them down the field. And I think the Colts grind out another gritty win against Tua's backup, Tyler Huntley. And then after that, if Tua gets cleared, the Dolphins could go on a run that could save them possibly a playoff spot, depending on how they do. So that's why I like Indianapolis here straight up, but Miami +3.5. The next game, the Minnesota Vikings over the Detroit Lions. This game comes down to one thing: the injury to Aiden Hutchinson. That was basically the difference in me taking the Lions or the Vikings. If that Aiden Hutchinson injury did not happen, I would have taken the Detroit Lions to win this game. I believe in Detroit. I saw the beatdown that they gave on the Cowboys. Worst loss in Jerry Jones' entire tenure of the Dallas Cowboys. Remember, he bought that team in 1989. So we're looking at 35 years of owning the Dallas Cowboys, and that is the worst loss the Detroit Lions handed them last Sunday. You know, so, and again, I think the one key thing I have about Detroit is who is going to provide their pass rush. Is it going to be McNeil? Is it going to be their second-round pick from last year? Like, they don't really have a pass rusher, and this is what I would tell everybody out there that's watching. Implore the Detroit Lions to talk to the New York Jets about Hassan Reddick. I think he could be a huge difference maker for them. He could give them a legitimate pass rusher that will help them in the long run. And I think, and they have $77 million in space. So I think the Lions, that's the guy they should go after. If Max Crosby, how frustrated he is, if he wants out of the Raiders, I think the Lions could definitely talk to them as well and say, let's pair Max Crosby and Aiden Hutchinson together. That's probably the most intimidating pass rush duo in the entire league if that happens. But the reason why I'm going with the Vikings here, Aiden Hutchinson's injury. I don't think the Lions will generate a pass rush. I think Aaron Jones should be healthy. And how this Vikings defense has played all year, I expect Jared Goff to have a very tough day, which will be a huge problem for the Lions moving forward this weekend. So that's why I like Minnesota here, -2.5. Minnesota straight up. The next game, the Philadelphia Eagles over the New York Giants. I am taking Philadelphia this weekend based on the fact that, it's where the Eagles can play as high or low as they want to throughout the week. They can be awkward. They can be downright bad, downright not good to watch. But I am taking the Eagles here because at the end of the day, if you're going to tell me, okay, can I trust Jalen and AJ and Devontae and Saquon, or should I trust Daniel Jones, Tyrone Tracy, who actually had a very good 100-plus yard scrimmage day, and Malik Neighbors and Theo Johnson, Brian Nabel? To me, this is a game to where, the Giants, and again, I'll say it like I did last week, I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Giants competed or even beat the Philadelphia Eagles in their current state, but just knowing how inept that offense is and knowing that every chance that Daniel Jones gets in a primetime window, by the way, and this game is a primetime, but he still has the worst record in NFL history in terms of primetime games. But I'm taking the Eagles here. More talent, a little more trust, and I just trust the Eagles to grind out a win in a place that they have routinely, kind of taken over for that part of the stadium and city in that game. So that's Philadelphia -3 and Philadelphia straight up. The next game, the Los Angeles Rams over the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders' offense looks dead. They just traded Devontae Adams for a conditional third-round pick. Trey Tucker's dealing with an injury. Jacoby Myers isn't 100%, and Michael Mayer's been absolutely absolved from the offense, which is stunning. And I just think the Rams, even with the Cooper Kupp news about him probably not coming back, of him coming back or not, and knowing Puka's definitely not practicing this week, I have all the confidence in the world the Rams, with Matt Stafford, Tutu Atwell, Marcus Robinson, Kobe Parkinson, Kyron Williams, and that ragtag offensive line, should be able to run the ball effectively against the Raiders' defense, and I just cannot see the Raiders' offense, knowing how vagabond it's going to be after this game, that I have trust that the Raiders can turn it around offensively in the right moment. So that's why I like Los Angeles Rams here, -5.5, and the Los Angeles Rams straight up. The next game, the Washington Commanders over the Carolina Panthers. I'm taking Washington here, -7.5. Based on the fact that the Carolina Panthers, they've played better, and they've had moments to where Andy Dalton has clearly moved the ball better offensively and looks a more competent quarterback than Bryce Young does. But they're playing one of the hottest young, quarterbacks and offenses in the league. The Commanders, Jaden Daniels, the reason why the Ravens won that game was not because of his passing. They won because they held him to, I believe, 22 yards on the ground. As a team, the Commanders only ran for about 53 to 57 yards as a team. And if you can eliminate Jaden Daniels' moving ability, he still can kill you from the pocket. He still threw 2 touchdowns, including 2 incredible ones to Terry McLaurin. But I'm taking Washington here just because I trust the talent there, even though losing Jonathan Allen to a torn back. Best wishes to that big man over there. But I'm taking Washington here based on better talent, the Darryl Green retirement ceremony, and just trusting that the Commanders can roll a Panther team that can be competitive, but they're just not the Commanders. So that's what Washington here, -7.5, and Washington straight up. The next game, the Kansas City Chiefs over the San Francisco 49ers. Taking the better quarterback, taking the better quarterback, and taking the experience of the Niners have been scarred by this too many times that I feel like even with Brock Purdy and the Niners having the home field advantage and having probably better talent one down in the league or in this game is the reason why people are going to probably take the Niners. I'm taking the Chiefs. They're the defending champs. They've done nothing, in my opinion, to say that they can't be number one and they can be anyone and beat anyone at any given time. And I just feel like, again, right at the key clutch moment, there's going to be a sad note where something happens and the Chiefs either get a huge stop or they get a huge play that win them the game. So, but I'm surprised that they are underdogs in this game because I thought they would be slight favorites. But I guess with San Francisco being at home, they do not trust the Chiefs to travel well. But that's like Kansas City here +1.5 and Kansas City straight up. The next game, the New York Jets over the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm taking the Jets here because they got Devontae Adams for a conditional third-round pick that can become a second due to playing time, or if he becomes a first or second team All-Pro. And I feel like for the Jets here. The news about Russell Wilson being in line to start for the Pittsburgh Steelers definitely puts a damper on things. I think Russ is a better thrower of the football than Justin Fields is, but Russ is not nearly the athlete that he used to be that I really feel like needs to bail out this offensive line. And I think if Russ is getting this start, I just have very little hope against this dominant Jets defense that's been stewing for the last couple of weeks. Up until, yesterday, I think the Jets pull out this win, especially because I just cannot see anybody covering Devontae or Garrett Wilson. Even if they're doubled, that's going to leave Garrett, Allen, and all those other guys open for key moments. So, but that's why I like the New York Jets here, -1.5, New York Jets straight up. The last two games, the Baltimore Ravens over Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm taking Baltimore here, -3.5. I thought Tampa, their offense was fantastic, but their running game, and I also want to shout out the third string, Sean Tucker, had a career game. I think they said they were the third team in NFL history, joining like the 23 Dolphins, the 2000 Broncos, to have 275 plus passing and 275 rushing yards in the same game. They just, in the second half, just obliterated the Saints defensive line with running on the ground. I thought Chris Godwin had 11 for 125 and 2 Ds, played very well. But I just think the Buccaneers in this spot have their moments to compete against the Ravens, but I just feel like if you're going to tell me who makes more plays, Lamar or Baker, I think Lamar has beaten Baker in every single time that they played each other throughout their careers. And I'm going to trust that the Ravens defense and the Ravens offense can hold well enough on both sides to get the victory for the Birds. Tampa, I wouldn't be surprised if they won, because I like how Tampa's played. Their defense really clamped down in the second half. But I'm taking the Ravens here. Better quarterback, bit more experience, and I just trust the Ravens personnel to make a few more plays against Tampa than I do Tampa's going against Baltimore's. So that's like Baltimore here -3.5 and Baltimore straight up. And lastly, the Chargers over the Cardinals. The Cardinals have one of the worst defenses in the league. The Chargers seem like they started to get back to Chargers football that we know through the first couple of weeks. I think the Cardinals are basically going to be in sell mode. Marvin Harrison may not play due to concussion. He's their best offensive player outside the quarterback. If he doesn't play, the Cardinals offense dies. And I believe the Chargers, who can win in a variety of ways now, should be able to grind out a very tough and gritty victory, against Arizona in a place that, as time goes on, more and more fans are not going to come to the games because they know the team isn't great, and I think it's going to give opportunities for other fan bases to travel down there and speak their mind and have fun. So, but that's why the Los Angeles Chargers here -2.5, and the Los Angeles Chargers straight up. So those are my picks for this week. Like, comment, rate, and subscribe. Please check out the NFL YouTube Prognosticators page for a lot of other guys and gals like Andrew Warren, Bridgewater's Finest, Half Moon's Picks. If you watch any of those guys and gals, Fire and Broom Sports, please check them out because they're great listens to for picking predictions every week. But that is it. So good luck to all players, coaches, teams, fantasy players, and fellow prognosticators. And until next week, everyone, this is Matthew Fanatic signing off. Until then, so long.